Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channel and the review of NXT for the 2nd of May 2011, which actually is kind of plodding along here. Not exactly the best of situations by any stretch of the imagination, but what can you do? Ultimately, you get to where you get to because these are shows that kind of go along in awkward situations, or the 3rd of May 2011, and that's ultimately where we go. Hornswoggle does a refereeing gimmick here, and ultimately, it's not horrible, but it's not the greatest thing in the world either. Obviously, as we kind of move forward, there's a lot of hype for the birthday bash of The Rock, which probably got picked up by our microphone here a little bit. But anyway, that is from Raw, and again, this is a rough season. Darren Young, D. Young, coming in last week, getting defeating again in his deal with Titus O'Neil, which seems to go on forever and ever here. Hornswoggle being a referee ultimately leads to him getting kidnapped in this program eventually here. Obviously, not exactly the best of situations. Chavo Guerrero and Darren Young they do the blindfold gimmick, which ultimately, or not the blindfold gimmick, but Hornswoggle trying to check him out and make sure that he remains somewhat reasonable to this process, not cheating and the like. And again, Chavo coming in trying to get his better shots at a guy like Darren Young is pretty cool for what it is. Hard shots by Chavo. Chavo not willing to take too many backward steps, but does kind of kick into the midsection of Young. Young sends the man into the buckle and kind of fights around a little bit. Not exactly the best of situations, but ultimately where we are, and a leg drop across the throat, and gets where he wants to be. Ultimately kind of going back and through some stuff. Tossed to the outside, and ultimately Chavo tries to time a dive a little bit better, dives over the top rope, plunges to the floor. Young, obviously going to be the highlighted guy in a situation like this, and is for the most part, although Darren Young fights up from underneath, doesn't exactly go the best of situations. Young sends his man to the outside through the middle rope and doesn't get all he wants on it. Does get enough in the process of things, and ultimately Young takes a couple of shots and hits a couple of situations there. Clothesline by Darren Young on the bounce back. Young also is noticing that Titus O'Neil, who he's been feuding with for it seems like 10,000 forevers, is doing commentary on the outside. They exchange some words. Slower match than needs to be. Hornswoggle, obviously a pro on the season, so integrating him as a referee, just another way to keep the stories going between these two and kind of keep things somewhat copacetic, I guess you'd say, but at the same time, Chavo Guerrero trying to cut things off, trying to keep things going. Guerrero bouncing around, and actually forgotten how really good he is at just getting under people's skin. Northern Lights suplex by Young, who Hornswoggle is unwilling to count the pinfall for. Chavo Guerrero obviously goes to the outside after hitting a bit of cheating on Darren Young. Goes to the outside, hits a frog splash from the top, and gets a cheating victory. There is kind of some go between with Connor O'Brien and Kozlov. Kozlov trying to get him to break a board with his head. That doesn't work out very well by any stretch of the imagination, and not exactly the best. He finally does it, but not exactly the best of looks. Now, with everything we know about concussions, but at the time would have been considered somewhat appropriate, I guess. although not exactly the smartest thing in the world by any stretch of the imagination. Amazing how bloated Conor O'Brien looks. Lucky Cannon is his opponent for this particular edition. We have from the outside Lucky Cannon kind of strutting around with the feathered boa. There's been some interplay between these two, although not as aggressively as previous. O'Brien seems to be in the babyface position simply because Lucky has been the more heel of the two over the last several weeks. Vladimir Kozlov on the apron. O'Brien tries to work the arm and spends several minutes doing just that over the duration of the match, pretty much. Not exactly, something to write home about, but at the same time, a pretty good run there. Lucky Cannon has difficulty getting O'Brien, who is much more powerful than himself, over in a headlock position. Doesn't get what he wants on that. Cannon, although, does get some cheap shots and eventually gets a victory off of the cheap shots. Hype again around the idea of The Rock's birthday party. Basically, Byron Saxton tells Yoshitatsu that he's getting way too distracted with the Maurice situation, tries to put that into alignment. William Regal is out here and going to finally face off against Jason Novak that they've been building for weeks. Hype for Extreme Rules and other such things. Novak and Regal turns into what is a good match for Novak. Really do wonder what happened to the guy. Obviously trying to turn him into a white rapper character alongside JTG didn't work. They do insults, and Regal makes his way out, purple robe and all. Obviously, Regal doesn't want to waste his time, but basically tells him to shut up. There is a good bit of run down between the two, and Regal says that Novak, in fact, needs to be eliminated from NXT, and he's just the man to do such. Obviously in different words, but that's the undercurrent of the promo. We go then, therefore, to some more basic tie-ups. Regal actually going after JTG instead of Novak, and that's the match that actually comes together. Regal going after the Pro, and again, knees and forearms by Regal. Regal is so good with strikes. All of his strikes look vicious enough. All of his strikes look effective enough, but it's not necessarily to say that he isn't in a, position where he could, be in pain. Obviously, Novak staying at ringside cheering on his Pro. Regal takes the majority of the match as well, one would expect, with the war of words that's gone on between the two of them several times. And a comeback by JTG. G tries to get away from Regal. Regal gets him caught up in the ropes, and Regal eventually gets pushed back. There is a distraction and a disqualification as Novak finally comes in on Regal, and that is that. The hype for the continuation of issues as it relates to The Rock's birthday is here. They show highlights of that process from Raw for the last several minutes of the program. If you saw Raw, no reason to go through that. Weird that they would end with something related to The Rock and not a NXT related star. I understand Rock is a bigger star, but if you have an independent program, why not actually highlight it? In any event, we'll be back with more right after this.